afternoon. AC Lee, Empty Cross Cowboy Ministry coming to you today. Proverbs today, wisdom tomorrow, and let's talk about it all rolled into one. It is February 24, 2022. Let's talk about Proverbs 24. We're going to be 11:12. 11:12. Rescue those who are sentenced to die. Save them as they stagger to their death. Don't excuse yourself by saying, "Look, we didn't know." For God understands all hearts, and he sees you. He who guards your soul knows that you knew, and he will repay all people as their actions deserve. So what kind of death are we talking about? Spiritual and a physical death. This article I'm fixing to read covers both and gives an excellent explanation. So, here's a couple of verses that seem a little dramatic to us at first glance. How often in our society do we see people taken away to their death and staggering to a slaughter? We need to remember, though, that Proverbs not only speak of physical realities, but spiritual ones as well. So how can we learn from this particular proverb? There is the obvious slaughter to those who know Christ that is coming on the horizon. That event is the judgment seat of Christ, and the day when all men shall give an account of themselves to God. Too many think that on that day God's mercy will prevail, and God will simply allow all men and women into heaven. Nope. Or they just deny God altogether. The problem is that the time of mercy, that is, where God is showing amazing mercy to mankind, is now, not then. Every day God has indignation with the wicked, Psalm 7:11, and as a righteous judge, he is showing unimaginable mercy by not consuming the wicked each and every day, that he withholds the just consequences of mankind's sin. So contrary to popular thinking, God is showing mercy now, but in the day of judgment, that general mercy shall no longer remain. All there will be on that day is grace for those who have run to Christ, and infinite eternal judgment to those who chose to remain in their rebellion, thinking their own works will bear up in judgment. There have been other slaughters in history. To the Germans who watched the Jews being carted off to the slaughterhouses of the Third Reich, they were responsible to do something. To those who watched the awful specter of ethnic cleansing in country after country in our world, they were responsible to speak out against it and to do what they could to stop it. Well, they posted a Facebook meme. Well, that absolved them of all responsibility, right? In our own nation, there's been a silent slaughter that has been going on since 1973. Abortion has dwarfed the slaughters foisted upon society by the likes of Adolf Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot. Sadly, this slaughter continues at a rate of 4,000 a day, all legally, and now even paid for by our government. Well, anything that's paid for by our government is paid for by us, those who work and provide tax money to the government to run on. We've exported our murder of the innocents through the auspices of the United Nations and their wicked population control efforts. But if you don't think that's something real. So for us to say that such a slaughter is not happening in our enlightened century is to simply close our eyes to the truth that the wickedness of man has only multiplied to where they have come up with far more efficient ways to slaughter the innocent. God's call to us in the midst of the slaughter of the innocent is to hold them back. You can hear the cry of heaven saying, "Stop this. Hold them back from such a slaughter." Just like the heroes of the past who spoke against slavery and racism and the desires to cleanse the world of others unlike themselves, we need to speak out and stop this act of slaughter. To do otherwise is to be complicit with these murderers themselves. You know, whatever you don't speak out and stop, you're condoning. You pull up beside somebody at a drive-through window and somebody's beating up some old lady and you just drive on, you're complicit in that action because you did nothing to stop it. You condoned it. And you can like it or lump it. To do otherwise is to be complicit with the murderers themselves. We may not be the actual executioners, but our inactivity and unwillingness to take the cause of the innocent empowers them to continue the slaughter. I find it the most perverse of activities that people camp outside prisons protesting the death sentences on the most vile of criminals, but justify abortion, even up to the day of a child's birth. There has never been a more disgusting form of execution than that perpetrated upon the victims of a partial birth abortion. Yet for the most part, our society remains unmoved by this most horrific of injustices. God's word to those who sit silently by and watch the evils of a slaughter of innocents is terrifying. The Lord speaks first to those who claim ignorance. They say they did not know this. They knew nothing of a slaughter of this kind. They say this not because of actual ignorance, but as a ruse to cover up their own culpability, their own responsibility. God's answer to them is simple. He who weighs the hearts will consider this. God is saying to the multitudes who want to ignore such things that he knows their hearts. He knows you knew. He weighs all hearts and knows exactly what we know and what we do not know. The term weigh here is used of God's process of moral evaluation. The Lord says that a man's ways are all good in his own eyes, but God will weigh his motives in the end of his actions. God weighs our hearts by what happens as a result of our actions. Even when we choose to deceive ourselves, God is aware of the truth we refuse to embrace. If this is so in the little perjuries of our souls, is it not even more accurate in the major sins which we wink an approving eye toward by our inaction? God knows it because he keeps our souls, a term that speaks of how God watches over all we do. There never has, nor will there be ever something that we've thought or done that he does not know intimately and immediately. This is a terrifying thought to those who think God will forget our sin. To help us grasp this even more clearly, the writer of Proverbs tells us he is the one who will render to every man according to his work. This term, render, is one that is sobering because it means to turn back or return to another. In other words, what we have done and what we have allowed will be done and allowed upon us for all eternity. This is true with the physical injustices that we see in the world, but it is also true for those who do nothing for those staggering towards judgment without Christ, those that are lost. The ultimate injustice spiritually is when we refuse or cowardly back away from sharing Christ with the multitudes who are staggering towards the judgment seat without anything to pay for their sins. What an injustice we perpetrate when we enjoy salvation ourselves, but do nothing to stem the fearful judgment that will come upon others. We need to speak for the wicked injustices that are happening in our generation, and speak to those who do not know Christ. I read a statement somewhere that said, "Daddy, what were you doing when they were killing all those babies?" Each generation that passes is often asked by history what they did to stem the tide of evil in their generation. That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, and it simply says that all it takes for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing. Well, I posted on Facebook. Nope, that ain't all we're required to do, folks. We look back on Hitler's Germany and wonder why they did not speak out, why they did not do something. We look at the horrific murders of the communist regimes of Stalin and Pol Pot and wonder why no one spoke out or did anything. And at the judgment seat of Christ, the loudest thing we will hear will be the sound of our own silence. Yep, our own silence. In light of such ultimate moments, we need to ask ourselves, why do we not lift our voices to speak for those being led to slaughter? Why do we not do something? Yeah, why? Why indeed? Because we're all about comfortable. We're all about comfort. Christianity here in America nowadays. We believe in this Christianity that we don't have any obligation to fulfill what Christ has commanded us to do. I mean, just like this abortion thing, you know, well, I can't do nothing. Yeah, you can. How many hours a night have you sacrificed in prayer on your face, prostrate before God, praying with hot tears streaming down your face? Well, I don't have time. Well, I reckon you can pray from midnight to 3 in the morning. No, I can't. That'll kill me. Okay. Well, let's see what God thinks of that excuse in the end. Let's see how that works out. I mean, the truth is, we've got a comfort Christianity, and we're not going to sacrifice anything other than maybe going to church on Sunday and maybe a potluck on Wednesday. I mean, where is the agonizing prayer for all this stuff? I mean, if nothing else, we can pray. I mean, there's power in prayer, real power, not some facade of power, but an actual power. I mean, this whole comfort Christianity has just got me so irritated. I mean, it's like what a horse must feel with about 200 cuckleburs underneath the saddle pad and your chunky butt riding around on him all day long in the August heat. But anyway, think about that article. If you want to know more about it, hit me up and I'll send you the link. But we're all required, we all have an obligation to share the gospel and to stand for those who cannot stand for themselves. I mean, especially abortion. I mean, way back when this all took place, if the millions of claiming Christians would have got together and stood and said, nope, this ain't happening, it would not have happened. And you can argue with me all you want. But the truth is, we will all be held accountable for our action and inaction, for allowing evils to take place. And we'll certainly be held accountable for showing up day in and day out where we work, where we trod, and not sharing the gospel with those who are lost and will die and go to hell. Yep, we will be held responsible. Anyway, guys, love all of you. If you need prayer, contact information is on Empty Cross Cowboy Ministry Facebook page. I got a phone number on there. And if you're not saved, this very moment right now is a moment of salvation. And I'm not talking about this once saved, always saved junk. I'm talking about true conversion that will lead you to heaven for eternity. Not this other junk. If you haven't done that, if you're not 100% certain that you're saved and you're going to heaven, hit me up. We'll make that first priority, because that dash is the only time you've got to get that done. So anyway, love you guys. Y'all have a blessed day.